master's or PhD program, you're going to have to wait for a bridging work permit. LMIA work permits. Anyone hear of an LMIA? Anybody hear of LMIA? Labor Market Impact Assessment? Yes? Okay. Labor market, I'll say this for labor, I can, talk for hours about labor market impact assessments, but I'll say this one important thing to you guys. Most of you probably shouldn't even think about an LMIA, okay? Because what LMIA is that it requires an employer to show that they cannot possibly hire another Canadian to do your job. I mean, if you are a PhD candidate and only you have researched this and only you can do something, then perhaps I can show that. But if you're just applying for a job, A, the employer has to be willing to do this, and B, it depends. You've been educated here. I don't know how much work experience you have. If it's something that is a very general manager of something, this and that, it's going to be very difficult for us to get an LMIA. Okay, but I'm going to show you options other than an LMIA as to how you can get your permanent residence. But the LMIA, so another important thing to know about the LMIA work permits is because it's so difficult to get for most of you, you cannot waste your time while you have your post-grad work permit. Okay, there's no time to waste anymore. You have to start thinking about permanent residence as early as possible. And I'm preaching to the choir, I know, because you're already here and you're already thinking about it, and that's good. Okay? There's also some types of work that doesn't require a work permit. It's limited. If any of you want to be a minister, a clergy, if you want to, there's some acting and etc. Business visitors as well. If you wanted to, start your own business and you're not allowed to manage, but you wanted to attend board of directors meetings, there's work there. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to move on to permanent residence soon, I promise. I just have one more thing to tell you about work permits. It's called the 4 in 4 out rule for work permits. Anybody hear of this? Yes, okay. So what the 4 in 4 out rule is it, what's going on? Sorry. It started to be felt in April 1st. The law was passed on April 1st, 2011, okay? And the clock started counting on that day. So the first time it was felt is April of this year. And what it is people who have worked for 4 years in Canada will not get another work permit for 4 years if they are going to be working in a NOC B, C, or D category. Okay? There are some exceptions to this, like if you're on a spousal work permit or employer-specific PNP work permit. What this means is that, say for example, you were working in Canada in a B category, say a supervisor at a fast food restaurant. And, say you haven't got your PR yet, and say in Saskatchewan, where they really need fast food supervisors, you were able to get an employer to get an LMIA for you. Well, once your postgrad ends, you're only going to be able to work there for 1 more year. If you don't get permanent residence, you're going to have to leave the country for 4 years. This hasn't affected a lot of students yet. A lot of students, make it their mission to get permanent residence as soon as possible, and they can. A lot of people in the trades, in the chefs, the supervisors, the admin work, the secretaries, they are caught by this. Okay, but you just needed to be aware of that. Okay? Any questions about that? All right, let's move on to permanent residence. Permanent residence in Canada is divided into 3 categories. The first one that I'm going to talk about mostly in this seminar is the economic categories. These are the categories where the government says we want people to immigrate because you will bring economic and social benefit to Canada based on your skills. Okay? We're going to talk about the express entry system, which now governs the Canadian experience class, skilled worker class, and skilled trades class. We're also going to be talking about provincial nominee programs. There's 2 kinds of provincial nominee programs well, there's several categories, but provincial nominee programs, there is the one that you can get 600 points for express entry, but there's also provincial nominee programs where you don't go through express entry and you just get your nomination and you can apply straight to the federal government for permanent residence. We'll talk about that. There's a caregiver program as well that some of you or even your spouses may consider. If any of you are artists or your spouses are artists or athletes, is very talented, I mean, like, not that you just like it, but you are, you can actually, you have been able to earn a living doing that. There's also a very little known category, but very effective category for self-employed artists and athletes. Okay? Now, the second category, which I won't spend too much time on, but just for you guys to know, is the family sponsorship. And that includes spousal sponsorship. Parental sponsorship, you won't be able to sponsor your parents until you get your permanent residence, but spousal sponsorship. If any of you are married, thinking of getting married, or common law with a Canadian, spousal sponsorship is an option to consider. A, because you can get permanent residence, but B, because the government now allows, if you are going to apply for spousal sponsorship within Canada, they also allow you to obtain an open work permit at the same time while you're waiting for permanent residence as well. And then there's the refugee and humanitarian compassionate grounds. And here's what I'm going to say about this. When you go to a lawyer, hopefully a lawyer is not going to tell you this, but who knows? When you go to someone and you say, well, I want to get permanent residence, and if they recommend to you apply for refugee status, you need to think twice about their expertise, okay? Because most of you are here because you have very good paths towards permanent residence. You have legal status, right? You have your degrees in Canada, and you probably are eligible for open work permits. If you make a refugee claim in Canada, you are putting yourself in the deportation. You sign an agreement to have a conditional deportation, okay? So that if your hearing is denied, you have 30 days to leave the country, or else it will turn into a deportation order. And if you ever want to come back to Canada, you need special minister's permission to come back to Canada. If you make a refugee claim, or even if I had a guy who tried to make a refugee claim but later decided to withdraw, and they know that he tried to make a refugee claim, forget about getting another study permit or work permit, because they don't trust that you want to leave the country. Okay, so just be very careful about that. Not that every time you shouldn't make a refugee claim, but it has to be a very, very serious consideration of all your options. Any questions? Okay, let's talk about express entry. This started in January of this year, and it's gotten a lot of students really worried. There are some good parts to it, and there are some not so good parts to it. I'm going to talk about how you can either maneuver your way through it or find other options. Okay, so let's go through the basics. You guys have heard of express entry? Yeah? A lot of you have? Okay. I'm just going to go quickly through it. So express entry, how it works is first, you need to go, we put you in and you get an online profile. You have to qualify under a Canadian Experience class or skilled worker class in order to even get an online profile. Okay? But just because you qualify, okay, doesn't mean that you can get permanent residence. Now, if you qualify, you get an online profile, you get into the express entry pool, you can stay there for 1 year, and if at the end of the 1 year you're not out of the pool yet, they'll give you an option to renew. But as you can probably guess, the main hurdle is not to get in the pool, although you do need to get in the pool. The main hurdle is to get out of the pool afterwards, okay? Because only by getting out of the pool are you then able to actually apply for permanent residence. Okay? How do you get out of the pool? It's going to be based on points called the comprehensive ranking system. It's going to be based on skills and experience. The LMIA, if you have an LMIA, most of you probably won't, and PNP, okay? I'll go through that more in detail, but let me first talk about how to get qualified to get into the pool. I'm going to talk mainly about the first two. The third one is more for construction workers and cooks and chefs. Most of you probably that won't apply to you. But the first one, a lot of you may already qualify to get into the pool. Okay, it's the skilled worker class. Now, before this year, the Conservatives have really clamped down on the skilled worker class, and only a few occupations could apply if they didn't have arranged employment. But now, a lot of people, all high-skilled occupations can get points for the federal skilled worker class. You can apply. So what it is first of all, the minimum requirement, you need to have at least 1 year of full-time high-skilled work experience in an occupation, in a high-skilled occupation. Okay, we talked about what's high-skilled already. What is full-time? How many hours a week is full-time?
500.
How many hours a week? 30. 30 hours a week. Okay, so if you have 30 hours a week at least, and within a 1 year period, then you can get, then that qualifies you. Now, what if some people, well, what if I was working 60 hours a week? Does that mean I only need 6 months? No, you need at least 1 year. But what if I was working 20 hours a week and I work 2 years? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, it is okay. You can add the hours together. Okay? That's one thing. The second thing is language. You must pass at least 6.0 in your IELTS for the general in every single category. Not the final one, but every single category, at least 6.0. Or have 7 in your CELPIP. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? IELTS and CELPIP, the English language exams. Okay. So if you have, yes?
If English is your native language when you come to a country where English is your native language, do you still have to take it?
Yeah, I don't care if you're born, raised, 100 generations in England, studied English literature and a PhD in England. Every single person has to do the English exam. Okay? Yeah.
For the Canadian experience class, is it necessary to have the experience is one of the skills course?
You have to have skilled, high skilled work experience. If it's low skilled, it does not count. That is why it's surprising because this kind of category is quite straightforward, but apparently only 17% of federal skilled worker before what were approved because people just didn't provide the evidence for their work experience, and a lot of people were denied because of that. Okay? Yeah.
Talking about Canadian experience class, for that one we should have
yeah, I'll talk about that later, okay? But let me just talk about federal skilled worker class. Yeah.
Is that category should be $20 per contract? I mean, the category should be indicated in your contract and you sign for work or choice by yourself?
When you sign a contract with an employer, nobody thinks about knock codes. They're like, I'm going to hire you for this job, okay? How we prove is by us drafting the letter for the employer. If you just ask the employer to draft you a letter, they have no idea what to say. They can, even if you say you need to draft the duties and responsibilities, they'll just draft your actual duties and responsibilities, not taking into account what knock codes are. If you say, okay, let me just cut and copy the knock codes and put it on the letter, your application will also be rejected because the officer says, well, this is fake. Okay? So it's a real art to drafting the letters, but that's one of the most essential things, is to prove what occupation you actually worked in. Yep.
It was my understanding that work experience gained while you're still in a student visa is excluded. Is that correct?
No, not for the skilled worker class. You see the 3 bars there, right? Can you guys read that? The first one says federal skilled worker. I know it's not really clear. Federal skilled worker. The second one is Canadian experience class and federal skilled trades class. When I do these presentations, a lot of times people are mixing up the rules between the first category and the second category. That's why I don't want to talk about Canadian experience class yet. I don't want people to mix it up.